So what's happening here is Minky and David. I was giving Minky. So Minky's just processing psychologically what he's literally thinking. Bye, Minky. So David was here on the bed. I came out of the bathroom and I laid on the bed with him and started to have a little bit of affection. And Abby, she is on the bed, which David has now gotten used to. Hello, Abby. And what has happened is Minky was coming down, and Minky and David have quite a bit of conflict historically. Hi, Minky. Hi, Abby. So Abby blinked. So it's a recognition that she's consciously processing. So I'm using and making up that word consciousness as a process, as a function, as an abstraction. An abstraction is without boundaries. That's why it's an abstraction. Hello, Abby. Hi, silly girl. Then to let Abby recognize that I'm acknowledging her. So anyhow, back to David is, hello, Mr. David. So David raised his head up. So, yes, David. David doesn't like people touching him when he's sleeping or laying down. So it's taken a while to get used to David. Hello, David. And so Minky was coming in while I was giving David some affection, and then David became quite agitated. And of course, he's looking at Minky, but he's expressing his agitation towards David. David expressing it towards me. Sorry, I'm just trying to flip it over here. Hello, Abby. So he starts to growl, and he looks towards me, growling as to come after me, not as in like keep her away, but in actual directing that growling towards me when I'm touching him, because he's irritated. Don't touch me. I'm irritated, just like we would as human beings. But the profound point is that for David, he would do it, and the reason because of familiarity, of family and safety. You always lash out at the ones that love you the most, because you know they'll forgive you, because you have a higher complexity of that relationship. Abby, what are you doing, silly girl? Hello, Abby. Hello, silly girl. You're okay, Abby. Right. So she's not looking to as an affection aspect of it. It is just a kind of a routine thing for her to smell things, looking for food, because of her emaciation. Her emaciated condition when she was found in when she was rescued in Mexico. So, hello, Abby. So for David, I just want to say, here. Okay. So for David, hello, Abby, it is teaching David that he can trust me enough that he can attack me. Sounds kind of an odd thing to do, but it's a context of family. It's a context of love. It's a context of codependency and interdependency. So then what I do is, the point, of course, is I'm going to pull back within caution not to be attacked or bitten. I mean, he's, as you can tell, this is a 16-ounce coffee cup. Literally, you can see how small it is in my hand. I'm 5'11", so there's David. Hello, Mr. David. You can see he's not as, right? That's his nose on top of it. So he's that prominent in his behavior, and so I let him understand that it's okay to growl and turn his agitation. It's not anger, because anger is just hi, Abby, just two-dimensional, right? See her cognitive processing when she hears her name, egocentrism building, interdependency, and codependency. Inter and intra. Hello, Abby. Hi, silly girl. You're okay, Abby. Abby, you're okay. Hi, silly girl. So that I see her motion that second time I said it, and you see her head kind of nuance to the right-hand side and dip down a little bit. So I have to also match that with what I'm seeing peripherally, and with a delay of digitizing this video back and forth. So there's going to be an out of sync. So I have to pay attention what I see there by anticipating her movements beforehand, sooner and faster. That means paying attention to the smaller nuances of behavior. But anyhow, that's just, hi, silly girl, right? So she's very food motivated. I don't use treats or anything like that. Hello, Abby. Hi, silly girl. You're okay, Abby. So she wants affection. She wants that. It's teaching family, right? So that's why with David is the same thing as letting him understand that it's okay to growl at me because I'm not going to get angry at him. And if he does something that is angry or growly, and then he heard his name. Hello, David. David. Hi, silly boy. David, you want some coffee? Hi, silly boy. Hello, Mr. David. So I'm 5'11", so we can see that we have almost the same size paws. Hello, silly boy. Hello, Mr. David. So it makes David uncomfortable. See that? The cognitive attempt to dissipate cognitive dissonance in the sense of that. So that's what the yawning represents there. So we lash out at family because family forgives us, because as we learn through the infantile structure of our life, that we can get angry as a baby and cry and still get love. We can lash out and be at our absolute worst or our absolute most elated and be with family, right? When do you have the most enjoyment and laughter as the baby? The context and the familial structure is there, interdependent and codependent, and then again, more than two people becomes eventually interdependent. So let me understand the protection aspect. So it's always interdependent, codependent, then interdependent. Interdependent, codependent, interdependent, and then that goes to the objectification, personification, the introverted perspective. So, by David being able to look at me and growl at me, and even if he has bitten me in the past, to be forgiven. Of course, I'm going to get upset, but I'm going to still keep the type of upset that I have or pain as kind of moderated as possible, because he is used to having done that in the past, getting in trouble, yelled at or beaten. So by teaching David that my behavior is not just casual, it's familial, it's a residential familial behavior, it's common, because I'm sounding commonly the same and seemingly to be the same each and every time, it gives David the idea to go, oh, okay, you're protecting me when I'm at my worst, but more in a gossamer thin nascent structure of cogency, more cognitively before it becomes cogent enough or salient enough to be processed. I'm going to finish this in 10 minutes. So this is just an improv motion here that occurred. And all these things that happen, I have to take as they happen organically. So I have the ability to then interact organically with what's actually happening, as opposed to contrived things where I could never do. I could not, sit for a test because it was two structures. So I'd be answering all over and I'd get kind of bored. But here in this point, it's understanding the context as it happens organically. That's how we were meant to be as actual human beings. We were born to be able to actually be random and function and adapt immediately. That's why we have sophisticated consciousness. We're egocentric and ego-selfish. So for David, he had to learn that what he was doing gradually, very, very incrementally, step by step, that it was okay, that what he was doing, he was with family again. So it's kind of a patterning aspect of that intradependency that's trying to occur, and to also build a healthy codependency and a structure of self-esteem that allows egocentrism to be predicated upon knowing that you're always safe when you have love and family, so to speak. Again, that's just kind of generalizing it so you guys kind of understand what I'm saying. So for David, when he growls and he looks at me, and again, it's not to growl um, to kind of growl for Minky's sake, but to growl and try to attack me, or to attack him, but as he's slowly kind of controlling himself cogently to calm himself down. That's a structure of consciousness, is to egocentrically, introvertively self-regulate and right, self-actualize. So then for David, he goes, okay, things are all right. I'm growling and he's not doing anything. And then what I do is either I draw away from him, or I say something to him, or I make an acknowledgement of Minky, and the conversation goes, and he understands that I'm creating perspective by objectification of what he targets as psychological and emotional threats to him introvertively. And then we have the ability for David to then learn that in any emergency or more dangerous or external threat to him or us situation that makes him scared enough to become angry and to warn, aka negotiate your distance away from me, David learns to be able to process what's happening at all times, step by step, by thinking about it. And let's see, I forgot what I was talking about. But it's just hi David, hi silly boy. But like aspects of dealing with these things, so this way we understand that it's okay for David to kind of want to get angry at me, and because it's family, right? And understanding that when we are out or there's that threat, he's not scared. He's not afraid. He just has to come to me for safety, which is again an intrinsic structure of evolution and codependency and family, and that point, because he was born as the infant dog, surrounded by his mom in the wild and his litter mates. So he felt the familial inclusive structure of that introvertive construct then becomes a somewhat more introspective, because of the ability to make objectification what's going around him. So then there's an external comprehension of sense of self developing towards consciousness, right? That's self-identity. So for David, he learns through that growling with me, right? And again, it's very specific because he's a Great Dane. He's 200 pounds. He's a meter at his shoulders, almost a meter. And he was on 80 milligrams of Prozac and 750 milligrams of Trazodone for 2 years before he came here. And he came here completely weaned. Deliberately, I wanted him weaned. And he was integrated socially, in the sense that he wasn't attacking anyone within 16 hours. But it was teaching him family. And so getting to the point there, and to hear the more intricate and intimate dysfunctions, the more introverted dysfunctions, right? The more shameful and painful feelings you have, you keep them closer to your heart, to your soul. So for David, those processes are similar because they're egocentric. They're not even ego-selfish. They're egocentric to the core of that construct. So they're harder for him to go through. That's why we have deep-seated dysfunctions psychologically that become traumatic forever, because we don't know how to get to those core little things without counseling. So we get to the spine, the heart, and then what ends up happening for David on his end is he understands that he has a safe place to process these highly complex and conflicted intrinsic behaviors of him, not innate. Innate means that you've stopped at the floor and you can't think of what else goes below it. Innate means you have to stop because you don't think there's anything. You think that's the finality of the conclusion. But intrinsic means we core down to tinier and tinier and tinier steps down, just like we do with technology. So that efficiency is where everything is aggregated upon, but we must disaggregate it. We must take it apart so it looks like as if it makes individual images and experiences, right? And as the less and less amounts get there, then the more and more streamlined it becomes, but it becomes more efficient because it's that core structure of emotional trauma that's built there as the baseline. And that's the hardest part to get out from a dog like David or any dog, because as you see the big dangerous things are going on, they start to calm down, they start to understand trust and proximity and not being beaten and all that stuff. And then as they start to shed and the layers come off, then it's those more core fundamental dysfunctions that are emotively residential. They're stuck into that heart, the soul. And so then those are harder to lash out because those are things that David or a child would have to suffer without any remedy or counseling on their own, which they wouldn't be able to because of the immaturity of their emotional comprehension. Oh, no, no, uh, I guess comprehension. I mean, it's a little too simplistic there. But so, so for David, as he becomes less and less overtly dangerous, it seems as if he's still seething and all those things, and that's where then again he gets to the point again unable to uh, self soothe, becomes that core thicker foundation of dangerous looking emotion. I mean, there's a better description. And that's why some dogs who are like that, they seem settled down, but then they suddenly get worse because they're really trying to control that core emotion that's so complex for them that they'll shut themselves down in the sense that um, I can't process it anymore, and I can only default to my core base emotional familiarity, the emotions that I'm most comfortable dealing with, which is anger or rage or hopefully joy with dogs that are only dangerous to other people and not to their family. So giving context allows David to understand that he uh, has the ability to process, and by giving context means like these kinds of experiences that are organically naturally occurring throughout the day, which is again how humans have always functioned and animals function. We don't have a clock, we don't have time in the animal world. There's no TikTok. Oh, it's 4:34. I better be there for my 4:45 appointment. Time is a egocentric structure. It's yes, academic, mathematically existent, but it is truly a human function. Physics has no bearing on the thought, on the consciousness of any other creature that we know of that has ever existed to know about time as something that's structured. So therefore, we have the intuition. Our dog's predacious natural behavior is adapting to whatever is being seen at any and all times. We have to behave in a way to protect ourselves, and we have to always be ready to escape as a defensive measure, which is defense then fight. If you can't escape, you will have to fight or feel shut down. Again, another traumatic aspect that is residential for all dogs that are dysfunctional in the sense of being beaten and so forth. So, giving David the ability to understand what's going on, what's happening, and have a safe place to process those thick core emotions allows him, because he's cogently calming himself down, basically like, I'm trying to keep the trauma down, I'm trying to keep the trauma down, which is even harder for him because he's got no other distractions. Giving him the context to be able to process that through by looking at me as if he's going to growl and bite me, which he would, not he might as a joke, but he would. and I mean joke not as as insignificant or facetious in that sense, but that he was seriously going to do that, and he wasn't just kind of bluffing. So for David, I gave him I gave him the opportunity to understand that, hey, it's okay. You can do what you want. You can get angry and lash out at family, and you'll be forgiven within reason, of course. You know, and then it teaches him the ability to process that experience with a completely new context, because previously to those type of situations, he was angrier, right? So if we upstream it back to where it originally originates from, the core aspects of the trauma inducing circumstances. Hi, silly boy. So he's checking in on me. I gotta make them breakfast. All right. So then he's able to process that and do comparative from the previous aspect. So I know I said 10 minutes, so it's 20. Hopefully that gives you guys some information in regards to how we destructure consciousness right down to that evolutional aspect, which is just basically taking the frame of, a second of the frame and cutting it and breaking each subframe and all the little frames around it. So we look at the aspect of time in those infinitesimal structures, so to speak, of what I mean in circumstantial aggregation in regards to how biology gathers the ability to learn by taking those experiences generationally in aggregation and conflation, into which the better and more common surviving manifestations or circumstances within the evolutional cycle moves up, um, and conflates and scales up, and of course is naturally selective, as Charles Darwin brilliantly stated. It goes to that point where then we have a greater and bigger forming, and you can think of that as a snowflake inside an iceberg, right? The snowflake, and then more, and so forth. So that's how we look at that structure of consciousness, but not in a linear structure. Okay, so I've went on long. This is the first one I've done in many months, since Lincoln died in July 11th. So it's November. Oh no, it's December 3rd. So I understand what the trauma feels like, and it's not necessarily catharsis. This one I'm actually posting. All the other ones that I've recorded, I wasn't going to post, never have an intention to post either. Just one of those things like, oh, look what they found after James, passed away, and then you guys get to look at everything that happened. But yeah, so it's something that I think, obviously Lincoln would appreciate. So, all right, here's Mr. David. Whoop, whoop, whoop. No, David, angry. See, so now he's fine with Minky gone, right? There's no growling, nothing. So, of course, I recorded it a bit late. Hello, David. Okay. All right. Yes, David. Hello, silly boy. All right. Okay, so I will post this up here. Right. We're all human. Our consciousness, we could be evolving so much more brilliantly and more expansively into aspects of so much more ethereal, I think that's the word, structures of consciousness and intuition, and even greater improvements in technology. Hi, David. Sorry, got dry mouth. Yes, silly boy. Hello, silly boy. Here we go, David. Hello, silly boy. Oh, yes, silly boy. David! 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 Minky! David! 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 David, you're okay. David! 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 David, you're okay, David. David, you're okay. You're okay, David. Hi, Minky. David, you're okay. David, you're okay. David, you're okay. Hi, Minky. Bye, Minky. Hi, David. David, you're okay. David, you're okay. You're okay, silly boy. You're okay, David. David, you're okay. So actually, it's kind of funny. That was actually live, as you saw there. And you can see David, he was yawning and he was trying to cognitive dissonance, right? He was trying to dissipate that. And I talked about that in the video here. So live, everything I'm saying is exactly happening in real time. So he yawns, but it becomes a complex, the emotional structure, the dysfunctions are highly extreme. And because they're highly extreme, he's unable to deal with highly complex emotional structures that he's not familiar with. Then he defaults to the core aspects of his own behavior. And then from that point in time, he is angry and he has to control himself because he's here seeing me. And of course, I have to kind of be calm and everything, but I'm very frightened. And he's upset. And Minky will always come when he hears a fight or something about to happen. It's just the type of interest that Minky has. And then there's Abby here. Hi, Abby. Hello, David. But what happens is, as he's processing it through, and I'm talking him back, and I'm just talking to him in a loud enough voice, not an angry voice, not a forceful voice, but a familial voice and a familiar voice. In other words, he's heard the voice before as a family structure. He understands that he's safe. And by feeling safe, David then goes, oh, okay, I can lash out. And that's what he did. Because it was too complex for him to have emotions there. Abby's behind him, and he had kind of a heightened circumstance just about, 20 minutes ago here on the video, or 30 minutes ago. So then for David, he's got to be able to process something that's complex, that is a part of his core behavior, because you can see he's just staring and looking at me. And he's not trying to hurt me, but he would if it came to that point. And he is 200 pounds, and he is, again, a very tall Great Dane. So that is, of course, being on Prozac and Trazodone. But we understand the structure of the behavior by seeing what he's doing, his anger directed at me, his negotiation, the way he's looking at me, his physical structure, how he starts to kind of get peripheral in his vision, like he looks like as though he glazes out, but he's more processing his field of vision in a two-dimensional structure for ease of redundancy and rhetoric processing, so much more efficient. And then he hears what's happening, so he's cogently calming himself down, and he's cogently making sense of what's going on in a highly complex circumstance. The yawn, different than the sneeze. So the yawn is, again, a cognitive dissipation of highly complex, right? He's feeling dissonance in his emotions. I don't know how to connect these. Something's going on. It's in my head. I've got to kind of relax and yawn it out, in a sense. And it's controllable. The yawn is controllable, because we know when we bug our dog and do that, they try to snap on our fingers. But it's like, well, if you're going to yawn, I'm going to, right? It's all these aspects of interactions as well as play. But for David just now, his ability to process these things teaches him family and safety, because he'll feel a similar type of anger or rage or confusion outside on the street. And so he has the consistency and the safety in more of a contrived environment here, where there's no concern of any danger from outside, so it's protected and it's happening, that he's then still feels, okay, look, I'm still sitting beside, and all right. And to the point where when we're outside, which is a little bit more challenging because the environment is uncontrollable and it is outside, so it's not a common scenery from the way that we then structure our laziness at home for another topic. It's giving them, David, the ability to calmly figure out what happened, his emotions, like to actually introvertively and introspectively self action, self-regulate, self-actualize, uh, become aware of what he was experiencing, to have egocentrism and ego, and again, it's established. So anyhow, so that's why it's kind of hard to keep, try to keep things focused and get things all dealt with. We see the behavior just now live with David, and it's not anything that is should be done by anybody else. As you can see, it's extremely, extremely scary, and you could be killed, not hurt, but killed. And I've been through quite a few of these dangerous dogs that really were just dysfunctional and misunderstood. And then, you can't give them food because the canine species fight to its death over food, right? So when you give any dog food, you're literally listening and enabling predator instinct. And the predator becomes, again, residential in the dysfunction because it's a safety measure. And here he is still, right? Hello, Happy. All right, I'm going to upload this thing. Since Lincoln, in tribute of Lincoln. If you like what you see, then please share my work and let people understand that there is no demarcation of consciousness in humans versus animals. All endothermic biology shares the similar map structures in the brain for the construction, for the abstraction of consciousness at corresponding dilutive scale relative to sophisticated human consciousness. Biology has the ability to compartmentalize the false positive. All the answers between 1 and 0, yes and no, black and white, all the maybes, all the 0.000, what is that at the end of that number? Where did that come from? All of that stuff biologically has an ability to survive as life itself is in that structure of consciousness from the cellular level, is the ability to learn. And the only way to learn is meaning that biology has to organically aggregate that onto something. It's got to do so within itself, and there has to be a need to, or a reason. And again, we could talk about that in a different structure, but really it's the case of getting things connected so that we understand how consciousness itself processes. Because again, all endothermic biology, right? Similar mapping structures in the brains of all of them. So then again, we're not human exclusive to sophisticated consciousness. We just scale it a little bit incorrectly. And then we look at the fact that for dogs, it's much more rudimentary, without self-coping skills, without egocentrism. And egocentrism is only built upon objectification and interrelational structures. That's it, right? It is understanding who you are to others, that objectification, then you understand yourself, introspective and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. So you have a self-identity. And that self-identity allows you to go through things and be willing to compare, sorry, itchy nose, willing to compare things in your mind fairly to understand what's going on under safer conditions. So maybe I'm trying to drag this out in case David gets angry at me again, but he's leaning right up against me. All right, so this consciousness thing is really isn't that difficult, right? And they can't do artificial intelligence consciousness because they don't know how to actually do design one properly. But the reality is, artificial intelligence, everything is all based on a computer, and computers are mechanically built. There's no mechanical ability to compartmentalize an incorrect answer, a false answer. And when when you're running your computer and sometimes it just hangs, that's because your computer's come up with an answer between 1 and 0. And it hangs because it's got nowhere to go. Overstuffed with memory and all that stuff? No, it's not that. Because it's just one single process that's stuck because of the false positive answer that it can't mechanically compartmentalize. And it's not like it's a water flow and everything backs up. It's stuck like a traffic jam. Whereas, again, biology has the ability to learn it, and it's generational, which means the improvement occurs from it through that layering in a quantum manner. I mean, all right, say quantum thinking. Anyhow, so these are the words of a guy who is doing this video tribute to Lincoln, and to all my dogs and your dogs who have passed away and said goodbye. And yeah, all right, thanks.